India is one of the hardest places to live if you don't have the money or power to survive. But for the rich and powerful, it's a bountiful paradise. Over centuries, India has gone through different types of challenges which have made life difficult for poor citizens. India is now going through a huge water crisis that developed step by step over decades to a severe level. Water stress is heavy within the South Asian nation, as around 1.4 billion people depend on the limited supply of water. Indeed, this 1.4 billion represents 18% of the world's population. If you were to look at a hydrological map of India, you would have to wonder, how is water a problem within this large nation? Yes, there are many rivers and streams all over the nation, but they represent only 4% of the world's consumable water sources. So then how does it fulfill the demand of 18% of the world's population? This is where we find a huge gap between supply and demand, and one of the biggest water crises in the world. Several large cities in India have faced a severe shortage of water, and Chennai has been the most prominent on the list since 2019. Around 9 million residents of Chennai city regularly face water shortages, resulting in a closure of hotels, restaurants, and factories. According to estimates made by a report published by Niti Aayog, at least 21 major cities in India are expected to face depletion of groundwater sources, including the capital, New Delhi. This report further stated that around 200,000 people have died within the country. In 2019, the water level of 65% of all reservoirs in the country was well below the normal level, and 12% were totally dried up. Tap water is not readily available in many of the major cities, and people are forced to depend on alternate water sources. During summer, water is like gold in these cities. A tanker mafia has arisen from this crisis, and several mafia groups are now selling clean drinking water illegally at high prices to city residents. But all these people had no such economical background to do so, and the poor section of the community are optionless in fulfilling their water requirements. The government has set up several public water pumps outside the major cities to fulfill the water requirements. But access to those locations is somewhat difficult, making it an unpopular option of meeting the water demand. So the poorest section of society is naturally forced to depend on polluted water sources, creating further health issues. Since 2016, several people with symptoms like fever, infection, dehydration, vomiting, and kidney ailments have skyrocketed with their exposure to polluted water sources. In 2016, people of the agriculture-based Jat tribe had damaged the Munak Canal of New Delhi, one of the city's crucial water sources, with the intention of obtaining water for their farmlands. The case went to the Supreme Court, and the judgment was made to cancel the OBC water quota given to them. This water shortage has affected not only humans, but also wildlife across India. Many aquatic as well as terrestrial species died from the water shortage with the extreme drought conditions in forests and sanctuaries. Some animals are now trying to enter village areas in search of water, and these thirsty animals are very dangerous, leading to deadly attacks on humans. In addition, plant species also have been affected by these water shortages as people are extracting all the underground water, leaving nothing for plants to absorb. So the effect on the biodiversity of the country is immeasurable. This water crisis impacts the agricultural sector as well as the industrial sector of the country. The agricultural sector is responsible for 80% of total water usage, and the inadequate supply of water to farmlands can derail the entire food production process of the country, leading to starvation. According to current estimates made by the public policy think tank Niti Aayog, 74% of wheat cultivating areas and 65% of rice cultivating areas will surely face significant water scarcity by 2030, aggravating the problem further. With the shortage of water, a considerable decline in farming activities has been reported, causing problems like massive unemployment. Left with no other option, farmers divert polluted and contaminated water towards farmlands to save their crops, resulting in an increase of toxic element percentage within those food products, creating further health problems. One key reason behind the water crisis is the difficulty of planning the country's water budget due to the unpredictable nature of monsoon rains. Monsoon rains are actually the major source for all the water resources within the Bharat nation. Roughly 80% of the annual rainfall is received between June and September, with the peak stage of the monsoon season taking place over a span of 25 days, pushing 1/7 of the total land area of the country to a full flood risk level. However, there is still no proper plan to store a considerable amount of this excess overflow within a short time span. This is not a recent issue that has only developed in the past 2 or 3 years. This has happened over decades since getting independence from the British Empire. But no government wants to deal with this excess overflow that flows directly to the ocean without any proper usage. In the past, there was a good balance between the supply and the demand, as the population was relatively low for the available freshwater sources. But with the increase of population and pollution of water sources, India lost that balance. Expressing his thoughts on the current water crisis of India, an advisor of the think tank Niti Aayog on water issues, Avinash Mishra, said, "The problem of water scarcity in India is mostly associated with improper management of the available resources. We use and discharge untreated water in open channels and freshwater bodies, leading to the pollution of fresh water," he says. But in the recent past, a massive decline of the annual rainfall of the country has been reported, and that affects the water crisis. According to annual rainfall data from 2018, the northeast monsoon rainfall was 44% lower, and the southwest monsoon rainfall was 10% lower than the average. In addition to these reductions, monsoonal patterns have also changed, causing delays in rainfall. These delays have a direct effect on the agricultural sector, as a delay of 1 or 2 weeks is sufficient to damage entire crops as farmers start their cultivations, predicting the rainfall at its usual time. The backbone of the Indian water supply is the river system. But with rapid industrialization and bad practices of people living on riverbanks, all these rivers have been polluted, making it difficult to use river water for human consumption. Heavy metals and lethal chemical concentrations are extremely high in these rivers, and long-time consumption raises risk of cancer. This is mainly due to the poor management of these hydrological sources and lack of a proper set of regulations by the government. India was once considered the biggest consumer of groundwater, and they extracted 251 billion cubic meters of water annually. However, now this value has been reduced by 61% since 2017, as unmonitored and unregulated extraction of groundwater has diminished and contaminated water resources. Groundwater sources had the potential of fulfilling more than half of the annual water demand. Unfortunately, these are now contaminated or totally dried up, making all of them difficult to use anymore. Now, India has lost all their main water supplies and has only very limited options to deal with the problem. It would be difficult to clean those contaminated groundwater sources, but they can clean surface water sources. They started cleaning the Ganga River 25 years ago, but it never yielded good results. None of the governments appointed ever wanted to carry out the cleaning program properly. If they could work with proper regulations over the long term, India has a chance of reverting the majority of those surface water sources to a consumable level again. In addition, they should carefully handle the excess rainfall received during monsoonal periods by utilizing proper storage methods to use this water during periods of lower rainfall. The Indian government has introduced several programs with different names to solve the issue. Let's hope that they will be able to continue these programs in the long term, despite regime changes in the future.